I found an engagement ring in my cheating husband's pocket, so I crashed his proposal. I was hanging up Garrett's jacket when the ring box fell out of his inside pocket and hit the hardwood floor. I picked it up and opened it, and sitting on black velvet was a diamond engagement ring that was easily twice the size of the one on my finger. We had been married for 6 years, and we had a 4-year-old daughter named Olive. I was wearing his ring right now and staring at a ring that was clearly meant for someone who was not me. I put it back exactly the way I found it and zipped the pocket and hung up his jacket. And when Garrett came downstairs 10 minutes later, whistling like a man without a care in the world, I looked at him and smiled. "What do you want for dinner?" I asked him like my hands were not still shaking behind my back. "Pasta sounds amazing," he said, and he kissed me on the forehead, and I let him because I needed to know everything before he knew that I knew anything at all. Garrett worked in pharmaceutical sales, which meant he traveled every single week. He left on Monday mornings and came back Thursday nights, and in between I raised our daughter and ran our house and trusted him completely because he called me every night at 8 and FaceTimed Olive before bed and brought me little gifts from whatever city he was in. My best friend Tess had made comments over the years that I always brushed off. "Does it ever bother you that he's gone that much?" she asked me once, and I laughed and told her I trusted Garrett with my entire life. "I'm not saying you shouldn't trust him," she said carefully. "I'm saying nobody should travel that much and come home looking that relaxed. My husband goes on one business trip and comes back looking like he barely survived." I called Tess the morning after I found the ring, and she was sitting at my kitchen table within 30 minutes with 2 coffees and a look on her face that told me she had been waiting for this phone call for a very long time. "Tell me everything and do not leave out a single detail," she said before she even sat down. I told her about the ring, and she set her coffee down very slowly and closed her eyes. "That ring is not a surprise anniversary present. That is an engagement ring in a proposal box, and your husband is planning to propose to another woman while being married to you. I know that, Tess. So what are we doing about it? I am going to find out who she is and when and where he plans to do it, and I am going to blow his world apart. But if he finds out, I know he will cover every track he has ever left." She grabbed both my hands across the table, and her grip was so tight it almost hurt. "Then we start right now, and we don't stop until we know everything. I need to tell you something else," I told her. I searched his jacket twice to make sure the ring was real, and both times my hands were shaking so hard I could barely hold the box open. But the second time, I also found a parking pass for a garage I've never heard of attached to an apartment building downtown that is nowhere near any client he has ever mentioned. Tess leaned back in her chair and stared at the ceiling for a solid 5 seconds. "He has an apartment somewhere? That is what I'm about to find out." The following Monday morning, when Garrett left for his trip, I dropped Olive at my mother's house, and Tess and I drove to the apartment building from the parking pass. We sat in her car across the street and waited with the engine off and the windows cracked because it was 70 degrees, and neither of us could sit still. "I feel like we're in a crime show right now," Tess whispered, even though nobody could hear us. "If a woman walks into that building with a key, I am going to completely lose my mind," I told her, and I meant every word of it. 2 hours later, Garrett's car pulled into the garage, and my stomach flipped so hard I grabbed the door handle. 20 minutes after that, a woman walked up to the front entrance carrying grocery bags like she was coming home from a normal day, and she punched in the door code without even looking at the keypad, like she had done it 1,000 times before. "That's her," I whispered, and something inside my chest cracked so wide open I could feel it in my teeth. Tess grabbed my arm hard enough to leave a mark. "Do not get out of this car. We are not confronting anyone today because today is only for watching." She was right, so I sat there and forced myself to breathe while I watched my husband's other life walk through a door I didn't even know existed. We followed the woman the next morning when she left the building, and we watched her walk into a veterinary clinic 4 blocks away. I pulled up the clinic website on my phone, and there she was on the staff page. "Her name is Leah," I said, and my voice sounded like it belonged to someone else. "She's a veterinarian." Tess stared at the photo on my screen for a long time. "She looks nice," she finally said. "I know, and I hate that. He has an entire second home with this woman. This is not some fling. He is living a double life with a woman who buys groceries and walks to work and has no idea his daughter exists." I put my phone down and looked at Tess. "I want to keep going because I don't think we've found the worst of it yet." Tess looked over at me with something between fear and admiration. "I don't think we have either." That Thursday night, Garrett came home and kissed Olive on the head and told her he missed her so much, and she threw her arms around his neck and said, "Daddy, I drew you a picture of our family." She held up a crayon drawing of 3 stick figures holding hands, and I watched my husband look at his daughter's art and smile like a man who deserved that kind of love, and I had to leave the room because the rage hit me so hard and so fast that I did not trust my own face. That Saturday morning, Garrett took Olive to the park, and I went into his home office and opened every drawer he had. In the bottom drawer underneath old tax returns, I found a manila envelope that did not belong with anything else. Inside was a life insurance policy dated 4 months earlier, with my name listed as the insured and a payout of $2 million with Garrett as the sole beneficiary. We had never discussed life insurance at any point in our marriage, and he had taken out a policy on my life without telling me, and he had been paying premiums from an account I had never seen. I kept searching because I physically could not stop. Behind the filing cabinet, pushed flat against the wall, I found a second phone in a black case that was powered off. I turned it on, and there was no passcode because he never imagined anyone would find it. There was one conversation thread with a contact saved as the letter D, and the messages between Garrett and this person rearranged everything I thought I knew about my life. Garrett had written, "How long after the policy is active before a claim looks normal?" The response said, 6 months minimum. Anything before that gets flagged automatically. Garrett wrote back, "The lake house trip is in July. That puts us at 7 months." The response was, "Accidental drowning works if there are no witnesses. Make sure the kid isn't there." I read those words 3 times because my brain refused to process them. The kid kid? Our daughter. Make sure Olive is not there when he drowns me at a lake house and collects $2 million so he can start a new life with Leah. I put the phone back exactly where I found it and walked into the bathroom and threw up and sat on the tile floor and called Tess. He's going to kill me, Tess. What are you talking about? There is a life insurance policy for $2 million and messages on a hidden phone about drowning me at a lake house this summer, and one of the messages says to make sure the kid isn't there. The silence on her end lasted so long I pulled the phone away to check if the call was connected. Tess, are you still there? I am putting my shoes on right now, she said, and her voice sounded like someone had poured ice water directly down her spine. I am calling the police, and you are not staying in that house alone tonight. Do you hear me? Do not let him know you found anything. Garrett came home from the park an hour later with Olive on his shoulders, and she was laughing and waving a melted popsicle around like a magic wand, and he was grinning up at her like the world's greatest father. We had the best time, Olive shouted at me from 6 feet in the air. Daddy pushed me so high on the swings. That sounds amazing, baby, I told her, and I smiled at my husband over our daughter's head, and he smiled back, and in that moment I understood with perfect clarity that this man could look me in the eyes and radiate love and warmth while actively planning the logistics of watching me drown. The police took everything seriously the moment I showed them the photos of the messages and the insurance policy. A detective named Warren sat across from me and told me they would open an investigation immediately, but needed time to build a case. We need to identify who this contact is before we move, he explained. In the meantime, you need to act completely normal. A plan to drown me in a lake. I told him a plan to drown me in a lake. I told him, I think I can manage. That night, Tess came over after Olive was asleep, and we sat on the kitchen floor with our backs against the cabinets. The police are building a case, but I can't just sit here waiting while he plays with our daughter like he isn't planning my funeral, I told her. So what do you want to do? I want to find out exactly when and where he's proposing to Leah, and I want to be standing in that room when he gets on one knee. Tess stared at me for a long time. That is the most unhinged thing you have ever said to me, and I am absolutely on board, so tell me what you need. I found a reservation confirmation on the burner phone for a private dining room at a restaurant called Bellamy's for the following Saturday. The note read, proposal setup requested, champagne on arrival, photographer arrives at 7:30. He had booked a photographer to capture the moment he proposed to another woman, while his wife sat at home putting his daughter to bed for the 600th time alone. I called Detective Warren the next morning. Saturday night at Bellamy's at 7:30. That's when it happens. I strongly advise you not to go. My husband is planning to propose to another woman 7 months before he plans to drown me in a lake. I am going to be in that room when it happens, and nothing is going to stop me. He paused for a long time. We will have plainclothes officers nearby. Confront the affair only, and do not mention the active investigation. I spent that entire week performing the role of happy wife so convincingly that I scared myself. I posted a Snapchat of Garrett and Olive making pancakes together captioned, Saturday mornings with my whole world, and the fact that I could smile while taking that photo told me something inside me had shifted into pure survival mode. I packed his lunches and kissed him goodbye on Monday morning, and folded his laundry and asked about his work trips. And every single night after Olive went to bed, I sat in the dark and counted down the days until Saturday. Tess picked me up Saturday evening, and I was wearing the dress I had been saving for our anniversary dinner, and I looked better than I had ever looked in my life, because there is no makeover on earth more powerful than pure and completely justified fury. Tess looked over at me from the driver's seat and her mouth fell open. You look like you are about to end a man's entire existence. That is exactly what is about to happen. He has no idea, does he? He thinks I am at your house drinking wine and watching movies while my mom watches Olive. He texted me an hour ago and said, have fun tonight, babe, with a heart emoji, and I almost threw my phone into the wall. What did you write back? I wrote you too, with a smiley face, and it was the hardest thing I have ever typed. Tess pulled onto the highway and the restaurant was 20 minutes away, and every mile felt like a countdown to something I could never take back. Are you nervous? She asked me. I am so far past nervous that I have come out the other side into something that doesn't have a name yet. I think the name for it is, my husband is about to find out. That works. We pulled into the parking lot at 7:15, and I checked my face in the mirror one last time and opened the car door and felt the warm night air hit me like a wall. You ready? Tess asked. I have been ready since the second that ring box hit my floor. I told the hostess I was joining a private event in the back, and she led me down a hallway lined with candles toward a room at the end. I could hear soft music through the door, and when I looked through the glass panel, I saw Garrett standing in the center of the room, surrounded by roses and candlelight, with Leah sitting at a table set for two, with champagne already poured, and a photographer adjusting his camera in the corner. He was wearing the suit I had picked out for him on our last anniversary, and the sight of it on his body in that room hit me like a physical blow. Tess squeezed my hand once, and then I pushed the door open and walked in. Garrett was in the middle of telling Leah something about how she had completely changed his life when he turned toward the door and saw me, and the color drained from his face so fast. It was like watching someone come apart from the inside. Keep going, I told him from the doorway. I want to hear how she changed your life. Leah looked from me to Garrett and back to me with pure confusion all over her face. Who is this? She asked, and the bewilderment in her voice was so genuine that I knew immediately she had no idea I existed. I'm his wife, I said, and I held up my left hand so every person in that room could see the ring. We've been married for 6 years. We have a 4-year-old daughter named Olive who has his eyes and who thinks her daddy travels for work every week, when really he's been living in your apartment pretending to be someone he isn't. Leah's champagne glass slipped from her hand and shattered on the floor, and the sound cut through the music like a gunshot. You told me you were divorced, she whispered to Garrett, and her whole face was crumbling in real time. I can explain, Garrett started, and both his hands went up like he was trying to calm a room that was already miles past calming down. Explain! I shouted, and the photographer backed into the corner so fast he nearly toppled his own tripod. Explain the ring in your pocket that cost 4 times what mine did? Explain the apartment you've been keeping with her while your daughter asks me every single Monday morning why daddy has to leave again? Explain the $2 million life insurance policy you took out on me 4 months ago without saying a single word? The air left the room completely. Leah's head snapped toward Garrett so fast I heard her neck crack. What life insurance policy? She asked, and her voice had dropped into something low and terrified. He took out a policy on my life for $2 million, I told her directly, because she deserved to hear the truth from someone who was actually willing to tell it. And on a phone he keeps hidden behind his filing cabinet, there are messages about making my death look like an accidental drowning at our lake house in July. I looked directly at Garrett, and I did not blink once. His exact words about our daughter were, "Make sure the kid isn't there." The silence that followed was the loudest thing I have ever experienced in my entire life. Leah stood up so fast, her chair crashed backward onto the floor, and she was trembling from her fingertips all the way up through her shoulders. "Is she telling the truth?" she demanded. Garrett's mouth opened and closed twice, and nothing came out because there was not a single combination of words that could save him from what was happening. "Are you planning to kill your wife?" Leah screamed, and the photographer physically flinched against the wall behind him. "She is crazy, and she is making all of this up because she found out about us and she wants to destroy everything," Garrett shouted back, and his eyes were already darting toward the door like a trapped animal looking for an exit that did not exist. "The police already have the phone," I told him, and I watched those 7 words land on him like a building collapsing. "They have every message. They have the insurance documents. They know about Dee, and they know about July, and they know about the lake house. So please keep telling everyone in this room that I'm the crazy one." Garrett stared at me, and for the first time in our entire marriage, I saw him without the mask. There was no charm and no warmth and no easy smile, just a man standing in a room full of roses realizing that every single lie he had ever told was collapsing on top of him at exactly the same time. Leah grabbed her purse with shaking hands and pointed at him. "If any of what she just said is true, I will testify against you myself. You told me you were building a life with me while you were planning to murder the mother of your child?" She turned to me with mascara streaming down both cheeks. "I didn't know. I swear to you, I did not know any of this." "I believe you," I told her, and I meant it completely. At the roses and the shattered glass, and at the roses and the shattered glass, and the photographer who would never forget this night as long as he lived. And then he looked at me with something ugly and desperate behind his eyes. "You ruined everything." I stared right back without blinking. "No, Garrett, you ruined everything. I just made sure everyone got to watch." Garrett was arrested that night after the person behind the messages turned out to be a college contact with a criminal record who cooperated with investigators immediately. My lawyer served divorce papers before his bail hearing, and between the insurance policy and the messages, and Leah agreeing to testify about every lie he had told his attorney, advised him to take whatever deal was offered. Garrett's mother showed up at my door 2 days after the arrest holding a stuffed elephant for Olive and crying so hard she could barely speak. She told me she would never forgive her son, and that Olive would always have a grandmother no matter what happened. Leah and I met for coffee about a month later, and she cried through the whole conversation while telling me Garrett had told her his divorce was finalized 2 years ago, and he only saw Olive on weekends. I sat across from her and felt something I never expected to feel for the woman my husband almost left me for, which was compassion, because she had been living inside the same lie I was, just from a different room in the same burning house.